the supreme fact of human life. From the great central fact of the universe, namely the infinite spirit of life behind all things, and from which all things flow, we are naturally led to inquire as to what is the great central fact in human life. From what we've already seen, the question almost answers itself. The great central fact in human life, of your life and mine, is coming into a conscious, vital, living awareness of our oneness with this infinite life, and opening ourselves fully to this divine inflow. This is the central fact, because in this all else is included. All else follows in its train. In just the degree that we awaken to our unity with the infinite and open ourselves to this divine current, we begin to express within ourselves the qualities, capabilities, and powers of that infinite life. And what does this mean? It means we begin to recognize our true identity, to bring our lives into harmony with the same great laws and forces, and to open ourselves to the same inspiration that has guided all the prophets, seers, sages, and all those of truly great and mighty power throughout history. For in the degree that we awaken to this realization and connect ourselves to the infinite source, we allow the higher powers to play, to work, and to manifest through us. We can, through ignorance, remain closed to this divine flow, as most people do, and so restrict or even block its expression in our lives. Or we can deliberately close ourselves off and deprive ourselves of the powers that by our very nature we are rightful heirs. On the other hand, we can awaken so deeply to our oneness with this infinite life and open ourselves so fully to its inflow, and so to the operation of these higher forces, inspirations, and powers, that we truly begin to live as divine beings, as what might be called God-men. And what is a God-man? It is a human being through whom the power of the divine is clearly expressed. Still human, yet filled with the life of God. No one can set limits on such a person, for the only limits that exist are those set by the self. Ignorance is the most potent limiter of all, the force that keeps most people living their little, dwarfed, and stunted lives simply because they do not realize the greater life to which they are heirs. They have not yet awakened to the true identity of their real selves. Mankind has not yet realized that the real self is one with the life of God. Through its ignorance, it has never yet opened itself to the divine inflow, and so has never made itself a channel through which the infinite powers and forces can manifest. When we believe ourselves to be only human, we live accordingly and express only the mere limited powers of humanity. But when we awaken to the truth that we are divine beings, that we are God-men, expressions of God life, then again we live accordingly and have the powers of God-men. To the degree that we open ourselves to this infinite flow, we are transformed from mere men into God-men. A friend of mine has a beautiful lotus pond, a natural basin on his land, his farm, as he always calls it. The pond is fed by a stream flowing down from a reservoir in the foothills some distance away, and a small gate controls the flow of this water into the pond. It is a place of rare and transcendent beauty. During the long golden days of summer, the lotus flowers rest in full bloom upon the still, clear surface of the water. Wild roses and other blossoms bloom endlessly along its banks. It is a place of rare and transcendent beauty. During the long golden days of summer, the lotus flowers rest in full bloom upon the still, clear surface of the water. Wild roses and other blossoms bloom endlessly along its banks. Birds come to drink, to bathe, and to sing their melodies from dawn until dusk. Bees hum busily among the flowers. Behind the pond stretches a grove filled with ferns, berries and brakes, a green cathedral reaching as far as the eye can see. Our friend is more than a man. He is what one might call a God-man, a lover of his kind, and as a consequence, there are no harsh signs on his land saying, "Private property, keep out," or "Trespassers will be prosecuted." Instead, at the entrance of a gentle woodland path leading up to this enchanting spot, there stands only one sign: all are welcome to the lotus pond. Everyone loves our friend. Why? They can't help it. His love for others overflows so freely that everything he touches seems to share in its abundance. What is his is naturally theirs. Children often come to play by the water's edge, their laughter mingling with the birdsong. Weary men and women sometimes wander there too, drawn by something they cannot name, and when they leave, their faces are softer, lighter, as though a burden has been quietly lifted. I have even heard them whisper as they depart, half under their breath, "God bless our brother friend." Many call it the garden of God. My friend calls it his soul garden. He spends many quiet hours there, and when the world has gone still, he can often be seen walking slowly among the flowers, or sitting on a rustic bench in the moonlight, drinking in the fragrance of the wild blooms. He is a man of rare simplicity. He says that here, among the silence and the lilies, the real things of life reveal themselves to him. That in this place, his best ideas, his clearest plans, and his greatest inspirations come to him like sudden bursts of light. Everything around the pond seems alive with a spirit of kindliness, comfort, goodwill, and good cheer. Even the animals grazing nearby. The cattle and sheep that wander up to the stone fence by the grove seem to pause and smile, as if to get the same enjoyment that the people are getting. Or perhaps it only seems that way, for one cannot help but smile upon seeing such perfect contentment reflected in them. The gate that feeds the pond is always opened wide, to admit a supply of water so abundant that it continually overflows, forming a small stream that winds through the lower fields, giving pure mountain water to the cattle and flock that graze there, and then continues on, carrying its blessings to the neighbouring lands beyond. Not long ago, our friend was absent for a year. During his absence, he rented his land to a man of what the world calls a practical nature, the sort who measures value only in terms of visible profit, of immediate return. This man had no time for what he could not count, weigh, or sell. He had no time for anything that did not bring him direct practical returns. He closed the gate that allowed the mountain water to flow into the lotus pond. The current of crystal mountain water that once kept the pond alive was stopped. The welcoming sign, "All are welcome to the lotus pond," was taken down. The path grew empty. The laughter of children faded. No more did men and women come to rest by the tranquil waters. A great change came over everything. Without the living flow from the reservoir, its true source of life, the pond began to wither. The lotus flowers drooped and died, their long stems sinking into the muddy bottom. The once clear waters grew stagnant. Fish that had thrived in the freshness of the current soon perished and gave off an offensive odour to all who came near. The flowers no longer bloomed on its banks. The birds no longer came to drink or bathe. The hum of bees fell silent. The cheerful buzz of life that once surrounded the pond vanished entirely. The whole scene, once radiant with vitality, now lay dull and lifeless. The difference between the spot now and the lotus pond when our friend gave it his careful attention is obvious. The gate had been closed. The living water from the reservoir, the source of all freshness, purity and abundance, could no longer flow through. The moment the source of all its life was shut off, not only was the appearance of the lotus pond entirely changed, but the stream that once overflowed into the surrounding fields below also dried up, and with it, the cattle and sheep lost their supply of cool, clean mountain water. In this, do we not see a complete parallel so far as human life is concerned? In the degree that we recognize our oneness, our connection with the infinite spirit, which is the life of all, and in the degree that we open ourselves to this divine inflow, do we come into harmony with the highest, the most powerful, and the most beautiful everywhere. In the degree that we recognize our oneness, our connection with the infinite spirit, which is the life of all, and in the degree that we open ourselves to this divine inflow, do we come into harmony with the highest, the most powerful, and the most beautiful everywhere. Sufficient is it to know that the life-giving spirit still exists. The reservoir is still full. The water is still pure and abundant. Only the connection has been closed. And in that separation, vitality fades, joy withers, and all that once overflowed becomes stagnant. Imagine the same truth in another way. An infinite ocean of energy being channeled through a garden hose. The garden hose being your mind and body. The tap is ever flowing, but the more knots, bends and crimps there are in the hose, the less inflow. When we find ourselves entertaining feelings of apathy, the hose is almost totally crimped, letting little to no energy through. But we are entirely capable of moving up to courageousness, acceptance, all the way to peace, where the hose is so totally open that it becomes one with the ocean. The ego, or the practical man as we have seen, tries to fix the hose, to polish the hose, to decorate it with pretty dreams, or complain about the lack of water, never realizing that unkinking it is all that is required. The moment the resistance is gone, the water gushes in again, clear, pure, unstoppable, washing away the mud, the algae, and the stagnation that had collected during the blockage. States of joy and vitality don't need to be conjured up. They are the natural and the normal. You only need to stop closing off. All that is necessary is to release your grip and allow those states to surface. Or take this third and final illustration. Imagine walking beside a river and spotting a narrow, stagnant pool at its side. The river itself flows deep and wide, full of energy, constantly moving onward, while the pool, cut off from its current, is heavy with scum, thick with algae and a murky stillness. No fish swim there. Life seems absent, because it's not connected with the life of the river. Now if you sit quietly by the river, you can hear its gentle song, the rush of water, the ceaseless motion toward the wider and the deeper. The pool, by contrast, is lifeless, motionless. Its water is stagnant. A mind that clings to permanence behaves the same way. It builds walls, seeks safety, and attempts to keep everything fixed. In doing so, it stagnates. Like the disconnected pool, it fills with old patterns, decay, and confusion. Only a mind without rigid barriers, a mind that flows freely with life, exploring, expanding, and moving with the current, can remain vibrant, creative, and eternally renewed. This is the kind of understanding true education offers. When you see it clearly, your life changes. Your relationships, your work, your presence in the world take on a new meaning. You stop seeking fulfillment in external things, recognizing that grasping at them only brings suffering. Instead, you allow the river of life to flow through you, cleansing your inner stagnation and renewing the vitality within your pond, even tearing away the wall that separates the pond from the river itself. But this can seem like a daunting process. At first, this cleansing can feel uncomfortable. When we open again to life, all the old sediment at the bottom of the pond is stirred up. The muck that has lain dormant begins to swirl. Old emotions rise, forgotten pains resurface, familiar fears come alive again. We believe something is wrong, that this turbulence is a sign to turn back, and so we retreat back into our muddy ponds. We prefer this still pond of control to living in the river of the unknown. But it's only the stirring of what was never meant to stay. The current is not your enemy. Life is not your enemy. It is your healing. This hesitation to be cleansed reminds me of a story Lester Levinson recalled in one of his talks. Travellers, carrying baskets of fish, stopped one night in a field of flowers. The air was fragrant and clean, but as they tried to sleep, they just could not rest without the smell of their fish. So they brought the baskets close to their heads and slept peacefully among the stench. Now, whether we talk about ponds, or hoses, or rivers, the principle is one. The source is constant. How open the gate is completely up to you. Furthermore, one must not overlook a glaringly obvious fact. The pond does not die because some force of evil forced itself upon it, but simply because the life-giving water no longer flows. There is no source of decay, no source of darkness or evil. Decay is only the absence of flow. Just as darkness is not a thing in itself, but only the absence of light, so stagnation is not a power, but merely the absence of movement. You cannot corrupt the reservoir, you can only block your access to it. And even the blocking is temporary, for the stream of life forever seeks to flow through you. You don't want all that garbage shoved down there, and you know that, and so does life. And so every day, it will pick at your weak spots to show you where you aren't free, where you are closed. Open the gate, and the pond renews itself. Unkink the hose, and the water surges. Let go of control, and the river carries you home. Life will still throw challenges your way, but you will rejoice. Each challenge is an opportunity to let go of your limitations. As the flow of the river gushes in, sticks and stones are hurled through that current, the remnants of your resistance. Yet, in a strong, living river, they become part of the beauty. Fish gather and flowers bloom along the banks. The one who fears this flow tries to escape it, to live in their own still pond, where all seems calm and manageable, but soon the algae grows back, the mould forms, and the waters turn foul. No matter how many flowers they try to plant, they decay, because the soil has lost its living breath. If you, the reader, have found yourself stuck in one of these muddy ponds, you don't need to accept your undesirable or unpleasant life situation in an attempt to uphold your identity as a spiritual being who is imperturbable and one with what is. Resignation is not true spiritual surrender. Nor would you deceive yourself and say, "There's nothing wrong with this mud, it's all divine." No, you would recognize that you wish to be free. You would accept the moment as it is, without judgment or complaint, and then take action to rejoin the flow. That is true surrender. The quiet acceptance of the present moment, joined with the inspired action that flows from presence. You wouldn't curse the mud or pretend that it's holy. You'd simply open the gate again and let the living water do its work. Spirituality is not about denying the mud, nor is it about condemning it. It's about understanding that the mud is only there because the water stopped flowing, and the water, once allowed to move again, restores everything to its natural radiance. And in the degree that we do this, do we overflow, so that all who come into contact with us receive the effects of this realization on our part. This is the lotus pond of our friend, the one who is in love with all that is truest and best in the universe. And in the degree that we fail to recognize our oneness with this infinite source, that we close ourselves off from this divine inflow, we enter a state where there seems to be with us nothing of good, nothing of beauty, nothing of power. And when this is true, those who come into contact with us receive not good, but harm. This is a lotus pond, as it was when the farm was in the hands of the renter. There is, however, one great difference between the lotus pond and your life and mine. The pond has no power to open the gate for itself. It is helpless and depends entirely on an outside agency. But you and I hold within us the power to open or close the gate to this divine inflow exactly as we choose. This we have through the power of mind, through the operation of thought. There is the soul life, direct from God, which connects us with the infinite, and then there is the physical life, which connects us with the material world around us. And between these two stands the life of thought, the bridge that unites the seen and the unseen, the inner and the outer, the divine and the human. Even in our laboratories today, we are demonstrating the great fact that thoughts are forces. They have form, quality, substance and power. We are discovering what might truly be called a science of thought. We are also beginning to see that through the instrument of our thinking, we hold creative power, not just in a poetic sense, but creative power in reality. Everything in the material world, everything the universe has ever produced, first began as a thought. From thought, it took shape. Every castle, every statue, every painting, every invention, all of them were first born in the mind of their creator before they appeared, embodied in form. Even the universe itself is the expression of the thought energy of God, the infinite spirit behind all things. And if it is true, as we have found, that in our real nature we are one in essence with this infinite life, do we not then see that in the degree that we come into a vital realization of this stupendous fact, that we too share in that creative power through the spiritual energy of thought within us? Everything exists first in the unseen before it appears in the seen. In this sense, it is true that the unseen is the real, the seen is the unreal, the reflection. The unseen is cause, the seen is effect. The unseen is eternal, the seen things are the ever-changing, the transient and temporary. It is, in truth, a mental universe we live in, not a physical one at all. The physical is only an extension of the mental, and an imperfect one at that. Everything we see, hear and touch is not a hard and inescapable fact at all, but merely the partial reflection of an idea held in mind. Our obsession with sensory evidence has trapped our attention in the world of effects rather than causes. Science, looking outward instead of inward, keeps dividing and measuring until it finds either the infinitely small or the infinitely large, yet still misses the secret that gives rise to both. The true wonder of existence is not found in stars or atoms, not in the swirl of galaxies or the pulse of life, but in consciousness itself. The simple awareness that can say, I am, is the greatest miracle of all. Every sound and colour, Every form and motion is but a side effect of that one primal fact, being aware. And because consciousness is cause, every movement within it carries creative power. Thoughts are not wisps of nothingness, they are living forces, subtle streams of energy with form and vibration. Each one is a seed of creation. Through the activity of thought, the invisible becomes visible, the unformed takes on shape. The power of the word is not just a figure of speech, it's a scientific fact. Through our thought, we have creative power. The spoken word is simply the outer expression of our inner thought force. It is the means whereby the thought forces are focused and directed along any particular line. And this concentration, this giving them direction, is necessary before any outward or material manifestation of their power can become evident. It's what allows the invisible power of thought to take visible form in the world. Much has been said in regard to building castles in the air, and those who do so are not always looked upon with favour. And yet, castles in the air are always necessary before we can have castles on the ground, before we have castles in which to live. The problem with the dreamer is not that he builds in the air, but that he does not go further and realize in life, in character, and in material form the castles he imagines. He completes only part of the work, a very necessary part, but leaves the other equally necessary part undone. Over time, a remarkable faculty has evolved in human consciousness: the power of mental reflection. Through it, we can form pictures within our minds. Entirely different from the conditions around us. In a single moment, we can leap from poverty to abundance, from despair to joy, from one end of the world to the other. Within the inner chamber of thought, we are no longer prisoners of circumstance. Yet this same power can either liberate or enslave. Used unconsciously, imagination becomes an escape from reality, wishful dreaming without action, fantasy without embodiment. In such cases, thought turns in upon itself, weakening its creative power. One may wander through life in a zombie-like trance, half living, half dreaming, moving through the outer world, but never touching it with real creative force. But rightly used, imagination is divine sight. It's the inner vision that looks upon the world not as it is, but as it may become. It sees through limitation to possibility, through appearances to essence. When joined with faith, discipline, and the courage to act, this image-making power transforms both self and circumstance. It is this power that has built our civilizations, discovered new worlds, and drawn from the unseen the marvels that shape our modern life. There is, connected with our thought forces, what may be called the drawing power of the mind. And the great law at work here is the same law that governs the universe itself, that like attracts like. We are continually attracting to us, from both the seen and the unseen side of life, forces and conditions most akin to those of our own thoughts. This law is continually operating whether we are conscious of it or not. We live, so to speak, in a vast ocean of thought, and the very atmosphere around us is filled with the thought currents that are constantly being sent out, wave after wave, by every mind. We are all affected, more or less, by these thought forces, consciously or unconsciously. And in proportion that we are more or less sensitively organized, or in proportion as we are more negative and open to outer influences, rather than positive and inwardly directed, we determine what influences enter our field of thought, and thus what takes form in our lives. There are those among us who are far more finely attuned than others. Their bodies and nervous systems are more delicately constructed, and as a result, they tend to be more affected by the mental and emotional states of those around them. A friend of mine, who is the editor of a well-known journal, is so highly sensitive that he finds it almost impossible to attend a large social gathering, such as a reception, without being influenced by the various moods and energies of the people he meets. After shaking hands and talking with many guests through the evening, he is scarcely himself and in his best condition for work until some 2 or 3 days afterward. Some might consider it a misfortune to be so sensitive, but not at all. It is, in fact, a gift. A finely tuned nature can be more open and receptive to the higher impulses of the soul within, and to all the higher forces and influences from without. However, it can be inconvenient if they don't know how to close themselves off and protect themselves from negative influences. This ability can be developed by anyone, no matter how sensitive they are. It is cultivated through conscious mental practice. There is, in fact, no habit more valuable to anyone, be they sensitive or not, than the practice of holding the mind in a steady, deliberate attitude such as this. I close myself to all lower and harmful influences. I open myself fully and freely to all that is higher, purer, and life-giving. By taking this attitude of mind consciously now and then, it soon becomes a habit. And when one does this earnestly, with genuine intent, it sets into motion subtle but powerful inner forces that quietly bring about the desired effect. In this way, all lower influences, whether seen or unseen, are shut out, while all higher ones are invited in, and they will enter to the exact degree that they are consciously welcomed. And what do we mean by the unseen side of life? Firstly, the field of thought and emotion. The invisible atmosphere surrounding us, charged with the mental and emotional vibrations that are generated by those manifesting on the physical plane through the agency of their physical bodies. Second, those same forces generated by individuals who have laid aside their physical bodies, or who have had them struck away, and now express themselves through finer, more ethereal forms of being, a body of a different nature. Human existence begins on the physical plane of the senses, but rises through successive layers of finer and more luminous worlds, each corresponding to our expanding divine nature and powers, leading toward a destiny of indescribable beauty and glory. Within, below, and above every physical planet is a corresponding ethereal world, just as within, below, and above every physical body is an ethereal body, of which the physical form is only the external counterpart and materialized expression. From this unseen or soul plane, the immediate home of humanity when freed from the physical, there extends, upward and inward, sphere beyond sphere, world within world, reaching to celestial realms of spiritual life utterly beyond the grasp of the physical mind. Embodiment, then, is twofold. The physical body is but the temporary husk or shell through which the real and indestructible ethereal body is individualized, developed, and perfected. Just as the grain of corn grows to maturity within its husk, which is later discarded when its purpose is fulfilled. Through this imperishable inner body, and through its corresponding ethereal world, the individuality of every soul is preserved forever. The fact that life exists in any form is proof of its continuance, even when the form changes. Life itself is the one eternal principle of the universe. It always endures, even though the form or agency through which it expresses may change or pass away. In my Father's house are many mansions. And surely, just because the individual has dropped, has gone out of their physical body, is not evidence at all that life has ended. It goes right on as before. There is not an end to this life in the physical, and then the beginning of a life hereafter, because there is no such thing as cessation. Life simply moves into another form, carrying on from precisely where it left off here. No interruption, no beginning or ending, only a smooth continuation of the same stream of being. For all life unfolds in steady evolution, step by step. There are no skips, leaps, or breaks in the chain. In that other, subtler form of existence, there are minds and lives of every degree and vibration, just as there are here in the physical world. And since the great law of the universe, that like attracts like, is always operating, we are constantly drawing to ourselves, from both sides of life, influences and conditions most akin to the tone of our thoughts and our inner states. A gruesome thought that we should be so influenced, says one. By no means. All life is one vast interwoven web of consciousness. There is nothing to fear, especially not when we take into consideration the fact that we have it entirely in our own hands to determine the order of thought we entertain, and consequently the order of influences we attract. We are not willowy, helpless little creatures of circumstance, unless we choose to be, unless we choose to drift without the wheel in hand. In our mental life, we can either hold firmly to the rudder, steering our thoughts, and so determining exactly what course we take, or we can fail to do this, and failing, we drift, and are blown hither-thither by every passing breeze. It is entirely our choice. And so, on the contrary, the thought is far from gloomy, but is a beautiful and encouraging one. Welcome should be the thought, because it means that we can draw to us the influence, the companionship, and the aid of the greatest, the noblest, the most luminous souls, and the best who have lived on the earth, whatever time, wherever place. Surely we cannot reasonably believe that those who worked in love and uplifted humanity here have ceased their labours merely because they have laid down the physical form. On the contrary, they are doubtless labouring in the same way, and in all probability with more earnest zeal, and with still greater power. And Elisha prayed, and said, Lord, I pray thee, open his eyes, that he may see. And the Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw. And behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire round about Elisha. Not long ago, while riding with a friend, we were speaking of the deepening interest people are now taking in the vital things of life, the eagerness with which they seek to understand the inner forces, to know themselves, and to discover their true relationship with the infinite. We spoke of the great spiritual awakening that is rising across the world, whose first bright signs we already see in these closing years of the century, and whose ever-growing splendour will unfold in the years to come. I said, how beautiful it would be if Emerson, that illumined soul, so far ahead of his time, who laboured so faithfully and fearlessly for this very awakening, could be here with us today to witness it all. How his heart would rejoice. My friend replied, and how do we know that he is not witnessing it all? Or even more, that he's not taking part in it still, perhaps with a greater influence than when he was among us in the body? Thank you, my friend, for that reminder. Truly, are they not all ministering spirits, sent forth to serve those who shall be heirs of salvation? As science is so abundantly demonstrating today, the things that we see are but a very small fraction of the things that actually are. The real forces that shape our lives and the world are invisible to the ordinary eye, yet they are the cause of everything we experience in the visible world. Thoughts themselves are forces. Like builds like, and like attracts like. To govern your thinking, then, is to determine your life. One observer of human nature put it this way: the law of correspondence between spiritual and material things is exact and unerring in its workings. People ruled by gloom attract gloomy experiences. Those who are discouraged and despondent fail to succeed at anything, and often live only by burdening others. By contrast, hopeful, confident and cheerful individuals draw the elements of success. Even their immediate surroundings, their home, their garden, their dress, reflects their inner state. A slattern advertises the ruling mood of hopelessness, carelessness, and lack of system. Rags, tatters, and dirt are always in the mind before being on the body. The thought that is most put out brings its corresponding visible element to crystallize about you as surely and as literally as the visible bit of copper in solution attracts to it the invisible copper in that solution. A mind always hopeful, confident, courageous, and determined on its set purpose, and keeping itself to that purpose, attracts to itself, out of the elements, things and powers favourable to that purpose. Now let us bring in the discoveries of modern science, which illuminate the nature of this unseen world. Quantum physics has shown that the very atoms that make up the universe, the supposed building blocks of matter, are in fact almost entirely empty space. The nucleus, tiny and dense, is surrounded by a vast field of energetic frequencies, a sea of interconnected information. Matter, the solid world that we cling to, comprises a mere 0.00001% of what is. Everything else, 99.9999%, is energy, vibration, and potential. What we perceive as solid is merely the material manifestation of invisible energetic fields. In other words, the universe is not a fixed, rigid machine. It is a living, breathing sea of information, of possibility. Heisenberg's uncertainty principle reveals that subatomic particles do not occupy fixed positions. The electron exists as probability until observed. It is the act of observation, the focused attention of a conscious mind, that collapses potential into physical form. Matter emerges from energy, from possibility. Remove the observer, and matter returns to its quantum state, becoming non-local again, merging back into the vast field of potential. Mind and matter, energy and form, are inseparable. The world we see is not independent of our awareness. Reality responds to consciousness. Consider the implications for human life. If we are composed of atoms that are overwhelmingly energy, then our solid sense of self, our body, our possessions, our routines, our personal history, our story, is the exception, not the rule. We are more energy than matter. Yet, under stress, under chronic survival mode, humans habitually focus on the 0.0001%, the body, the environment, and time. Hormones and stress responses push us toward a materialist identity, forcing the mind to obsess over survival of our possessions, survival of our appearance and our schedules. In doing so, we lose sight of the 99.9% of ourselves that is energetic, fluid, and interconnected with the entire universe. This is why the ego becomes self-centered, self-important, and obsessed with control. It seeks to predict and manage outcomes because it perceives separation from the quantum field, the vast ocean of energy and potential that is life itself. But reality, as quantum science shows, is far more flexible than the rigid world of the senses. Our awareness determines our reality. Where we place our attention, there the universe aligns. Where focus goes, energy flows. Thoughts held with clarity and expectation have creative force. Thoughts mired in fear, doubt, or distraction dissipate their power. Thoughts that are hopeful, confident, and purposeful draw to us corresponding circumstances and opportunities, both seen and unseen. The unseen includes not only the mental and emotional currents of those around us in this life, but also the energies of those who have moved beyond the physical body. Faith, therefore, is nothing more than the consistent, deliberate application of thought energy. It's an earnest desire coupled with unwavering expectation. The more a thought is held and nurtured, the more it shapes reality, drawing potential into form. Doubt or fear neutralizes this force. Consistent expectation strengthens it. This is not a poetic metaphor. It's the principle of quantum causality applied to the human mind. The great promises and teachings regarding faith, attraction, and manifestation are grounded not in sentiment, but in universal law. To live fully, to create effectively, we must recognize that the field of potential is vast, that we are energetic beings capable of directing and shaping that field, and that the material world responds to the quality, consistency, and expectation of our thoughts. Every thought of yours has a literal value to you in every possible way. The strength of your body, the strength of your mind, your success in business, and the pleasure your company brings others depends on the nature of your thoughts. In whatever mood you dwell, your spirit absorbs unseen substances that correspond exactly to that mood. This is as much a law of chemistry as it is a law of the spirit. The unseen elements outnumber 10,000 times those that we do see, and they respond to the quality of your inner life. The principle expressed in the injunction, "Do good to those who hate you," is grounded in natural law, and when our eyes are opened, self-preservation will make us stop all evil thought. Those who live by hate will die by hate. That is, those who live by the sword will die by the sword. Every evil thought is a sword drawn on the person to whom it is directed. If a sword is drawn in return, so much the worse for both. Another wise observer of life reminds us, the law of attraction operates universally. We attract whatever we desire or expect. If desire and expectation are in conflict, the mind becomes divided and chaos results. Determine resolutely to expect only what you desire, and then you will attract only what you wish for. Carry any kind of thought you please about with you, and so long as you retain it, no matter how you roam over land or sea, you will unceasingly attract to yourself, knowingly or inadvertently, exactly and only what corresponds to your own dominant quality of thought. Thoughts are your private property, and you can cultivate and direct them at will. This is the drawing power of the mind. Faith is nothing more than the focused operation of thought, an earnest desire coupled with firm expectation. The more consistently desire is maintained and watered with expectation, the more it draws from the unseen into the seen, from the spiritual into the material. Let the element of doubt or fear enter in, and what would otherwise be a tremendous force will be so neutralized that it will fail of its realization. Continually held to and continually watered by firm expectation, it becomes a force, a drawing power that is irresistible and absolute, and the results will be absolute in direct proportion as it is absolute. We are beginning to see that all the promises and teachings regarding faith are not merely vague sentimentalities, they are scientific facts, grounded in immutable law. Even modern experiments are starting to reveal the scientific principles behind these forces. Some of us are learning to use them consciously, not blindly, as has often been the case in the past. Much is said today about willpower, as though it were a force in and of itself. But will is not an independent power. It's a specific expression of thought. It's through what we call the will that thought becomes focused and directed. And in proportion to that focus and direction, thought becomes effective in the work that it set out to accomplish. There are, in a sense, two kinds of will: the human will and the divine. The human will belongs to what we might call the lower self. It operates mainly in the realm of the mental and the physical, the sense will. It seeks to control, to strive, to make things happen by personal effort. It's the will of the one who is not yet awake to the fact that there is a life that far transcends the life of merely the intellect and the physical senses, and which, when realized and lived, does not do away with or minify these, but which, on the contrary, brings them to their highest perfection and to their powers of keenest enjoyment. The divine will is the will of the higher self, the will of the one who recognizes their oneness with the divine, and who consequently brings his will to work in harmony, in conjunction with the divine will. The Lord thy God in the midst of thee is mighty. The human will has limits, the divine will does not. The human will says, this far and no further. The divine will says, all things are possible. It has no limitations. It is supreme. And so, in the degree that the human will is surrendered to and unified with the divine, it becomes supreme. In that state, the words, thou shalt decree a thing, and it shall be established unto thee, are no longer poetry, they are law. The great secret of life and power lies in maintaining conscious connection with this infinite source. The vitality of every life, its strength, its clarity, its creative power, is determined by what it relates itself to, what it identifies with. The divine is both immanent and transcendent, both beyond all things and within all things. God is both immanent and transcendent, both beyond all things and within all things. He is creating, working, and living through the universe today, through your life and mine, just as surely as ever before. We are too inclined to regard him after the manner of an absentee landlord, one who has set into operation the forces of this great universe and then taken himself away. In the degree, however, that we recognize him as immanent as well as transcendent, are we able to partake of his life and power. As we realize that the infinite spirit is here now, alive and active within and through all, and as we awaken to our oneness with that life, we begin to actualize in ourselves the qualities of his life. In opening to this inward and outward flow of divine energy, we become channels through which infinite intelligence can work unimpeded. It's through the mind that the soul's life connects with the physical life, allowing the inner essence to express itself through outer form. But for this to happen, the mind must be continually illuminated from within, continually reminded of its source. That illumination comes only as we consciously recognize our unity with the divine, of which each soul is a unique expression. It is through the instrumentality of the mind that the soul's life connects with the physical life, allowing the inner essence to express itself through outer form. From this recognition arises what we call intuition. Intuition is to the spirit what sight and hearing are to the body, a sense that opens inwardly instead of outwardly. Through it, we receive the direct revelation and knowledge of God, the secrets of nature and life, and through which we are brought into conscious unity and fellowship with God, and made to realize our own deific nature and supremacy of being as the Son of God. Spiritual supremacy and illumination realized through the development and perfection of intuition under divine inspiration gives the perfect inner vision and direct insight into the character, properties, and purpose of all things to which the attention and interest are directed. This inner faculty, we repeat, is a spiritual sense opening inwardly, just as the physical senses open outwardly. And because it allows us to perceive, grasp, understand, and know truth directly, independent of all external sources of information, we call it intuition. All true inspiration and revelation rest upon the recognition and development of this sacred capacity of the soul, its ability to receive, translate, and appropriate divine wisdom into conscious understanding. When one lives in conscious unity with the Father, born of deep trust, love, and surrender, this inner sense becomes a clear channel through which the infinite mind communicates directly. They open themselves through this inner sense to immediate inspiration and enlightenment from the divine omniscience and the cooperative energy of the divine omnipotence, under which he becomes a seer and a master. On this higher plane of realized spiritual life, the mind becomes impersonal and free. It acts with unfettered freedom and unbiased vision, without fear, without the distortions of personal motive. It perceives truth first-hand, independent of all external sources of information. Approaching all beings and things from the divine side, it sees them in the light of divine omniscience. God's purpose in them, and so the truth concerning them, as it rests in the mind of God, are then revealed by direct illumination from the divine mind, to which the soul is opened inwardly through this spiritual sense we call intuition. Some call this guiding presence the voice of the soul. Some call it the voice of God. Some call it the sixth sense. Whatever the name, it is the same inner knowing, the same spiritual compass that speaks from within. And in the degree that we awaken to our true selves, recognizing our unity with infinite life, and in the degree that we open ourselves to this divine inflow, does this voice of intuition, this voice of the soul, this voice of God speak clearly. And in the degree that we recognize, listen to, and obey it, does it speak ever more clearly, until by and by there comes the time when it is unerring, absolutely unerring in its guidance.